Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. We are back. All-Star break's finally over. It was nice to get a break, but second, third day into the All-Star break, definitely jonesing for some action, so we're back. As far as Friday night slate, there's 14 games. We'll go through all of them on the live show at 4 p.m. As far as this video, I'm going to go through as many as I can. It was tough zeroing in on the starting pitchers. There was a lot of to be determined, a lot of question marks as far as who's starting. So I sent the guys home saying, hey guys, we're just not going to be able to make much of a video tonight. And then about an hour after I sent them home, starting pitchers popping up. So I'm here by myself. I'm going to do as many as I can. Whatever I don't get through, like I said, we'll go through on the live show 4 p.m. So MLB Friday, let's go.
Welcome to the SWUS. The SWUS. SWUS. Hey, get the SWUS.
So the first game up is D-backs Cubs. It's an early start, so this one's going to be on before the live show. Toast bet the Cubs. I think he got it at plus money too, because he took it before. He took it when Zach Gallen was projected starter. Now it's going to be Ryan Nelson. I might end up just tailing him. I mean, the Cubs were heating up against righty starters before the break. I mean, in the last 30 days, the Cubs are a top 10 lineup against righties. So, I mean, I might just tail toast on the Cubs just to throw some action down in that game. I personally was leaning towards an over, but I don't really like to bet totals in Wrigley. So, an over or Cubs money line in the first one, I might just tail toast.
Next up, we got Philadelphia on the road in Pittsburgh. Pirates are dogs at home here, plus 125. Total sitting at 8. We got Aaron Nola on the mound for the Phillies. Martin Perez getting a start for the Pirates. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and according to the model, we got a solid lean on the Phillies here. 3.05 to 1.89 after 5 innings. Final score 5.3 to 3.36 Phillies. Now let's get into this one. We'll start with the Phillies bats. Numbers look great. Top 5 lineup on the season, 6th in WRC+, 3rd in OPS. Top 3 lineup in the last 30 days. As far as their numbers on the road, though, it's a little bit of a concern. In the last 30 days, 19th, 19th, and 19th. So they've definitely been much more productive at home, this Phillies lineup. Their numbers against left-handed pitching look solid, though. On the season, this is a top 10 lineup against lefties. Last 30 days, 12th, 12th, and 11th. I mean, not bad at all. As far as their numbers against lefty starters, last 7 to pitch against the Phillies, 5.17 ERA, 143 whip. Last 3, 5.50, 161. So they have gotten to lefty starters. Now, when you pull up the game logs, it's a little concerning that they haven't seen any. I mean, they saw Max Fried on July 5th, and they got to him. Before that, they saw Imanaga on July 3rd, didn't get to him. Then Trevor Rogers on June 27th. I mean, look at the dates. They haven't seen a ton of left-handed pitching. I mean, if you want to look at the last 7 lefty starters to pitch against the Phillies, you got to go all the way back to June 9th, Jose Quintana. I mean, the good news for the Phillies is if you look at the logs, I mean, other than Tariq Skubal, they pretty much were able to get to most of these lefty starters. Also, Jordan Montgomery on this list pitched a good game against the Phillies. But again, we're talking about a month ago for that one. So the Phillies have not seen a ton of left-handed pitching. That's something we do have to mention. And weirdly, they've had problems scoring runs against Martin Perez. Check this out. He's made 3 starts against the Phillies in the last 2 seasons. He's 2-0 with an 0.48 ERA, which is just wild, especially when you look at his whip. He's got a 150 whip, so he's letting guys on base. It's not like he's shutting the Phillies down. He's letting guys on base, but for whatever reason, the Phillies have had serious problems scoring runs on this guy. I mean, an 0.48 ERA in its last 3 starts against the Phillies. That being said, if you look at the Phillies' offensive numbers against him, the current Phillies lineup, 82 career at-bats, they're hitting 317 off him with an 841 OPS. So again, they haven't had problems hitting off Martin Perez. Just for whatever reason, they haven't been able to get runs across, but that does not sound sustainable to me, especially when you look at Martin Perez's numbers. I mean, in his last 8 starts, 7.22 ERA, 186 whip. His last 3 starts pretty much just as bad. Now, he does have nice-looking numbers at home. It's something we have to give him. I mean, his last 3 home starts, 2.45 ERA, and a 150 whip. But there needs to be an asterisk here. He's only made 1 home start in the last 2 months. Let's pull up his game logs. July 4th, against the Cardinals, he pitched great. Pitched into the 8th inning, just 1 earned run, 8 base runners, an absolute gem. Before that, you got to go back to May 26th to find his last home start. So, yeah, he's got some nice-looking home numbers, but we're talking about May. with that. We've seen him pitch one great game at home since returning from injury, so we'll give him that. He does have slightly worse splits against righties, and the Phillies probably will have 7 righties in the lineup for this one, but I mean, it's not notable. 365 WOBA against lefties, 381 WOBA against righties, so really nothing to take away there. Pitch mix wise though, if you like the Phillies, you like the look of this. His main pitches are the sinker and the cutter. The Phillies are first and second in baseball against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So they haven't had problems hitting his pitch mix. Look, I know he's got like an 0.40 ERA against the Phillies in his last 3 starts, and he always seems to skate by and find the way to win the game. But personally, I don't trust him here. I expect the Phillies to hit him. On the other side, we got the Pittsburgh Bats. Last 30 days, borderline bottom 5 lineup. Last 14 days look okay, but again, all-star break. Keep in mind the sample size. As far as their numbers at home, not good. Bottom 5 lineup at home this season. Bottom 5 lineup at home in the last 30 days. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, I mean, on the season, bottom 3, bottom 4 lineup against righties. Last 30 days, slightly better than that. 19th, 16th, and 16th. And again, I mean, last 14 days, you can point at that, but there's 5 or 6 days missing there for the All-Star break, so super small sample size. And if you look at the numbers against righty starters, I mean, they're not really getting to them. The last 7 righties to pitch against the Pirates, 4.81 ERA, 116 WHIP. Last 3, 3.44 and a 1.31. And if you pull up the game logs, I mean, they got to Jonathan Cannon on July 12th, but he didn't even start. Garrett Crochet started that game and pitched 2 innings. Other than that, I mean, 3 of the last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Pirates, Chris Flexen, Aaron Savali, Tobias Myers, all pitched excellent games. So although if you scroll back to early July, late June, you can find some instances of the Pirates getting to righty starters. I mean, Colin Rea, Luis Severino, they have gotten to some, but 3 of the last 4 pitched great games. Now, real quick before we move on, I do want to point this out. Now, this is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, take it or leave it. Pittsburgh has weirdly been much better against good righty starters. And as we know, Aaron Nola, definitely a top-tier righty starter. The Pirates, against righty starters with an ERA below 350, actually a top 10 lineup. They've been terrible against bad righty starters, but against good righty starters like we know Aaron Nola is, Pirates have actually been solid. And speaking of Aaron Nola, he's actually struggled against this Pirates team. In his last 4 starts against Pittsburgh, he's 2-1 with an ERA over 5. 129 WHIP isn't bad, but still, ERA over 5 in his last 4 starts against the Pirates. The last time he pitched against the Pirates was September of 2023, so not even that long ago. He got hit up. 4 2/3 innings pitched, 5 earned runs, and he gave up 7 runs total. 2 of them weren't earned. 9 hits, 3 walks. Nola gave up 12 base runners in less than 5 innings of work last time he pitched against this Pittsburgh team. So, weirdly enough, Nola has struggled against the Pirates. Now, when we get to Aaron Nola's numbers, though, as we know, he's having a great season. 3.38 ERA, 103 WHIP on the year. Last 11 starts, last 5 starts, numbers look solid. As far as his numbers on the road, I mean, maybe not quite as good, but still, he's been fine on the road. 3.98 ERA and a 111 WHIP in his last 5 road starts. So we know we can trust Aaron Nola on the road. Here are his game logs, and I mean, pretty solid across the board here. If you scroll down to June 13th on the road in Fenway, he got absolutely smoked. That one game, I mean, 11 hits and 8 earned runs in less than 4 innings. That's going to be skewing his road numbers. So we just looked at his road numbers and we're like, maybe slightly worse on the road. No, that's one really terrible start skewing the numbers a bit. So it's important to take note of things like that. So as a whole, Aaron Nola has been reliable as hell. Now, I will say, Pittsburgh's been a decent lineup hitting that knuckle curve that he loves to throw. Throws it 31.8% of the time, and the Pirates are a top half lineup in baseball against that pitch. So there's something if you're looking to back Pittsburgh. But his other 2 main pitches are the 4-seam fastball and the sinker, and the Pirates are bottom 10 in baseball against both of those. So it's pretty thin. As a whole, I in no way, shape, or form, to quote Toast, want to back the Pirates bats here. But I feel uncomfortable putting my faith in Aaron Nola, making a road start. He's been worse against bad teams. He's struggled against this Pirates team. There's a couple angles here that I actually like for the Pirates bats. Feeling really coin flippy on that side. I wouldn't be surprised if the Pirates put up some runs on them. And when we get to the bullpen matchup here, man, if you told me 30 days ago that I'd be saying this, I would have said you're crazy, but based on recent production, you got to give the edge to the Pirates. In the last 30 days, the Pirates bullpen, 14th in ERA, 13th in WOBA. The Phillies bullpen has fallen off a cliff. in the last 30 days, 24th and 22nd in those two categories. And offensively against bullpens, again, edges has to go to Pittsburgh. In the last 30 days, the Pirates are a top 10 lineup in baseball in the late innings. So actually, based solely on recent production, the edge in the late innings goes to the Pirates here. As far as betting this game, I mean, I'm really considering grabbing an over at 7.5. You got to pay -125 for it, but I'm really looking at it because if the Pirates could just give us 2 off Nola, we should be in pretty good shape to hit that over at 7.5. So that's what I'm circling in this one. There's actually a home run prop I like, though. Check out Nick Castellanos' numbers against lefties with Martin Perez's pitch mix here. 596 expected WOBA, 15.63% barrel rate. That's against lefties with Perez pitch mix. Here's the problem with that. When we go over to Outlier, because usually when I find a hitter prop I like to confirm it with Outlier. Outlier did not confirm this one. Check this out. So let's go to Castellanos. All his trends are negative for this one. Let's sort it to odds. Cut it off of -200, somewhere in there. Look at this. Nick Castellanos has failed to exceed a half run in 7 of his last 9 games. Nick Castellanos has failed to exceed 1.5 total bases in 11 of his last 13. And they still have it at -120, which is something to take note of. He's failed to hit in 11 out of 13. They're still holding it at -120. Below that, Nick Castellanos has failed to exceed a half RBI in 8 of his last 9. So all the trends pointed out here by Outlier are definitely negative for Castellanos, but I like that barrel rate. I'm eyeing up Nick Castellanos' home run at +600. I think I might do something like that. I mean, you guys know I'm not big on the home run props, so if I do place it, it'll be a little bit of gambling involved, just having some fun. But I like Castellanos, the homer in this one. As far as the bet on the game, it would just be over 7.5 for pass. Next up, we got Cincinnati on the road in Washington to play the Nats. Nats short home dogs here, +100. Total sitting at 8.5. We got Frankie Montas on the mound for Cincinnati. Patrick Corbin. Corby's on the mound for the Nats. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on Washington here. After 5 innings, 3.26 to 3.04 Nats. Final score, 5.32 to 5.19 Nats. So let's go ahead and get into this one. We'll start with the Reds bats. Now, this is an interesting one here because the Reds seem to have caught fire right before the break. They were averaging like 7 runs a game in their final 6 or 7 games before the break. You can see in the last 14 days, top 5, even top 3 lineup, first in OPS. Again, last 14 days includes the All-Star break, so we're really only talking about 7-8 games there. But the Reds, who were really struggling to hit, specifically at home, all of a sudden caught fire at home right before the break. As far as their numbers on the road, I mean, bottom 10 road lineup in the last 30 days. In the last 14 days, they're a top 3 lineup on the road, but that's only 1 game because they had a homestand. So in the last 14 days, I'm pretty sure they've only played 1 road game, so disregard that. Here's the hot streak I was referring to. I mean, they're hitting .303 as a team with a 170 WRC plus in the last 7 games. This is 3rd, 1st, and 1st in baseball. So arguably the hottest lineup in baseball heading into the break. Again, we're only talking about 7 games, but definitely we need to mention it. That being said, Patrick Corbin throws with his left hand, which could be a problem. On the season, the Reds are a slightly below average lineup against lefties, 19th, 16th, and 14th. In the last 30 days, last 14 days, looking about the same. And lefty starters, I mean, they're not really getting to them. The last 7 lefties to pitch against the Reds combined for a 3.98 ERA and a 1.11 whip. Last 4 lefty starters, even worse than that. Here are the game logs, and it actually gets even worse because you can see here they're not getting to lefty starters. They did get to Austin Gomber, but other than that, it's pretty much only Bailey Falter. And when they hit him up, they had just seen him 6 days before that, so a little bit of an unfair advantage. I mean, Skubal we can give him a pass for, but Trevor Rogers was able to pitch a great game against the Reds. This Reds lineup, again, they were catching fire right before the break. Not so much against left-handed pitching. Now, the good news for the Reds is they're up against Patrick Corbin, and they haven't had problems getting to him in the past. In Corbin's last 3 starts against Cincinnati, he's 0-1 with a 7.47 ERA, 1.66 whip. So, yeah, the Reds have gotten to Corbin recently. Actually, if you rewind before that, though, Corbin had a little stretch where he was pitching well against the Reds, but now we're getting back to 2022. As far as his 3 most recent starts against the Reds, they hit him up. And check this out. The current Reds bats lifetime against Patrick Corbin, 446 average and a 1214 OPS. So, yeah, the Reds have nice-looking numbers against Patrick Corbin. And as we know, Corbin has been struggling, to put it delicately. I mean, in his last 3 starts, he's got a 6.19 ERA, 1.63 whip. If you rewind before that, there was a stretch where Corbin was stringing together some solid starts, but Nah, I mean, things seem to be falling apart for him. His numbers at home aren't any better. In fact, they're slightly worse. In his last 6 home starts, he's got a 6.48 ERA, 1.44 whip. Here are his game logs. And I mean, you could see back in late June, pitched a good game on the road in San Diego, pitched a good game against the D-backs back on June 19th, pitched a good game against the Tigers back on June 13th. But other than that, I mean, look at the 3 starts since then. The Rays got to him, the Cardinals got to him, Grimace got to him. So that little hot streak for Patrick Corbin seems to have come to an end. He's got a 380 WOBA against righties, which I don't like because Cincinnati's probably going to have 9 righties in the lineup. 9. Ellie De La Cruz sits against lefties sometimes, so we'll see. It's going to be at least 8. It's going to be pitching against a ton of righties. Also, pitch mix-wise, his 2 main pitches by far, the sinker and the slider, he throws those 2 a combined 69% of the time. Cincinnati, top 10, even top 5 in baseball against the sinker, against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So as much as I'd love to sit here, back my guy Patrick Corbin, I don't have a ton of faith for him in him here. I'm sure the Reds are able to score runs. On the other side, we got the Nationals bats, bottom 10 lineup in the last 30 days. Now, in the last 14 days, looking slightly better, but again, the All-Star breaks in there, so we're talking about a super small sample size. Same goes for the numbers at home. Last 30 days, 25th, 25th, and 25th in the last 30 days at home. Last 14 days, they look nice, but talk about a super small sample size again. Now, when we look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, they are slightly improved. In the last 30 days, they're actually a slightly above average lineup against righties. In the last 14 days, they're top 10, but again, super small sample size. The last 8 righty starters to pitch against the Nationals, actually a 6.48 ERA and a 1.68 whip. So they have been showing signs of life against righty starters. But when you pull up the game logs, it's kind of tough to get a read. I mean, they crushed Freddie Peralta. They got to Kyle Gibson. They crushed Lance Lynn. They got to Sonny Gray. So they're not even getting to some righty starters here. But look at 3 of the last 4. Colin Rea, Luis Severino, Miles Michaelis. All pitched excellent games against the Nationals. So there are some nice game logs here. Nats getting to righty starters, but also 3 of the last 4 righty starters to pitch against the Nats have pitched well. So kind of a mixed bag here. Also, they're matched up against Frankie Montas, who blanked this lineup earlier in the season. Now, I believe it was opening day on March 28th. Frankie Montas, 6 shutout innings, just 4 hits, not a single walk. An absolute gem. Now, that was all the way back on March 28th. We know Frankie Montas is a different pitcher than he was on March 28th, and we know the Washington Nationals lineup is much different than it was on March 28th, but still we have to mention it. Frankie Montas in his last 7 starts, solid-looking numbers, 4.10 ERA, 1.23 whip. Same goes for his full season and last 4 starts. His numbers on the road also looking solid. Last 6 road starts, 3.58 ERA, 1.13 whip, about the same as that in his last 3 road starts as well. Here are his game logs, and I mean, there are a couple on here where you could see Frankie Montas has had some problems. The Rockies hit him up just recently on July 10th. Also, the Brewers gave him problems back on June 16th. Cubs really crushed him on June 9th. So definitely some rocky-looking starts here, but there's also some really good ones. On the road in Yankee Stadium, threw a great game. Went on the road to St. Louis, threw an absolute gem. Also puts a great game against Boston on June 22nd. So some really nice-looking starts here. Also a couple really ugly-looking starts for Frankie Montas. But then we get to his righty-lefty splits, and this is where it gets interesting. Look at Frankie Montas' numbers against lefty bats. 376 WOBA and a 157 whip. 510 expected FIP against lefties. Nats are loaded up with lefties. They're projected to have 5 in the lineup for this game, but sometimes they even throw 6 in there, and 3 of their first 4 hitters are lefties. That's dangerous for Frankie Montas. I don't like that at all. Also, the Nats have decent numbers against the four-seam fastball, which is Frankie Montas' main pitch. Throws it 34.7% of the time. Nats are 15th against that pitch in the last 30 days. So, look, Frankie Montas has great numbers on the year, but I personally think the Nats bats are going to get to him. I think we can count on Washington to score runs here. Now, when we get to the bullpen matchup, no question, the edge goes to Cincinnati here. Now, if you look at these numbers, it doesn't look that significant. In the last 30 days, Reds are 8th in ERA, 17th in WOBA, Nats 21st and 21st. But keep in mind, the Nats just traded away Hunter Harvey. So they just lost one of their most valuable arms out of that bullpen. So not only has Cincinnati's bullpen outperformed the Nats bullpen, but I expect Washington's bullpen to be a disaster moving forward. Offensively against bullpens, no question, edge goes to the Reds. Now keep in mind, this graphic last 14 days, last 7 days. That includes the All-Star break. So that's pretty much only including that little 7-game hot streak. As a whole, if you go by last 30 days, these two teams are pretty even. So take those numbers with a grain of salt. As far as betting this game, I did bet this one. I took the over, got an 8.5 at -115. I'm pretty sure I paid for it. I'm a little suspicious about the total. Seems suspiciously low. I'll say that. I mean, Patrick Corbin getting the start. Now, you could say, hey, 8.5, maybe they expect Frankie Montas to deal. But keep in mind, Nats are very short home dogs here. So odds makers are not expecting Cincinnati to get to Patrick Corbin based on what we're looking at. But I personally think we can count on the Reds to score runs off Corbin. And I actually like the Nats to get some off of Montas as well. Also wouldn't be mad at a first 5 over here. But what I personally bet is the over 8.5 because I think the Nationals bullpen is bound to give up some runs. So hoping that Reds offensive hot streak they were just on before the break continues. I'm on the over here. First game I'm going to run through. We got Rays on the road in Yankee Stadium. Yanks are pretty heavily favored at home here, -185. Total sitting down at 8. Good pitching matchup in this one. We got Zach Eflin pitching against Garrett Cole. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got a slight lean on Tampa after 5 innings, 2.83 to 2.65. Slight lean on the Yankees' final score, though, 4.86 to 4.75. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. Yanks have definitely been the more profitable team on the season, plus 10% ROI this year. Rays are getting close back to even, though, -4.8 on the season. Now, the Yankees have been profitable at home, plus 2.9%, but look at the Rays on the road, plus 9.1% ROI on the road. So if you've been back in Tampa on the road, you've been making some money this year, definitely in the green. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with the Rays bats. In the last 30 days, they're a top half lineup, 6th in WRC plus, 15th in OPS, 15th in WOBA. Last 14 days, 16th, 20th, and 20th. But keep in mind, All-Star break is included in the last 14 days, so that's not a big sample size. As far as their numbers on the road, last 30 days, they're a top 10 lineup. And if you look at their full season numbers, that's kind of been the story with Tampa. For most of the year, they were really struggling to score runs at home at the Trop, but on the road, they've been a much better lineup. But then we get into their numbers against right-handed pitching, and this is where it starts to look ugly. On the season, bottom 10 lineup against righties. Last 30 days, pretty much a bottom 10 lineup for his righties. Last 14 days, even worse than that, but again, All-Star breaks in there, so that's a super small sample size. They're not getting to righty starters. The last 10 righties to pitch against the Rays, 2.56 ERA, 1.12 WHIP. Last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Rays, pretty much even worse than that, 2.03 ERA. Here are the game logs. I mean, they got to Stroman a little bit on July 10th, but other than that, I mean, you got starters pitching great games against the Rays. Eovaldi, Lorenzen. They did get to Alec Marsh on July 4th, but I mean, other than that, righty starters have had no problems pitching good games against Tampa, including Carlos Carrasco. And it gets even worse for the Rays here because now they got to try to hit off Garrett Cole, who's pitched great against this team. In his last 3 starts against Tampa, 2-0 with a 2.29 ERA, 0.81 WHIP. Excellent numbers. He's been even better than that at home in Yankee Stadium. His last 4 starts against the Rays at home at Yankee Stadium, 1.88 ERA and a 1.08 WHIP. So he's pitched very well when he's seen Tampa. Now, as I'm sure you know, Garrett Cole's numbers on the year don't look great. 5.40 ERA, 1.46 WHIP. Last 4 starts about the same as that. His numbers at home also look pretty bad. He's only made 2 home starts, but he's got a 6.48 ERA and a 1.56 WHIP. But keep in mind, he was coming back from injury, and in his last start, he looked absolutely dominant. On the road in Baltimore, I should know, I bet the Orioles and watched the entire game. He was almost unhittable. On the road in Baltimore, just 6 base runners, 1 earned run. A little shaky early in the game, but late second inning, he snapped into it, and he was he looked like prime Garrett Cole. So even though in most cases 1 start wouldn't be enough of a sample size to get me to just blindly back somebody, but after what I just saw on the road in Baltimore, keep taking into consideration he's coming back from injury, I trust Garrett Cole here. I think he pitches great. Now, if you're looking to back Tampa here, you can point at the lefty bats. Garrett Cole, definitely worse numbers against lefties, 360 WOBA and a 168 WHIP. But again, a lot of these numbers are going to be from his quote-unquote rehab starts, a few starts getting back into his groove. Tampa does have 5 lefties in the lineup, or at least they should. But most of them are towards the back of the lineup. 3 of the first 4 hitters in Tampa's lineup are righty, so main pieces for Tampa are actually right-handed. And when you look at the pitch mix, I mean, Tampa's not hitting fastballs, and Garrett Cole very reliant on the 4-seam fastball. He throws it 46.7% of the time. Tampa bottom 10 lineup against that pitch in the last 30 days. So again, in my opinion, I think there's enough evidence here to back Garrett Cole. I think he pitches a great game here. On the other side, we got the Yankees bats, certainly not up to par. I mean, the last 30 days, this is a bottom half lineup, 16th in WRC plus, 21st in OPS. As far as their numbers at home, even worse than that. I mean, earlier in the season, this was arguably the best home lineup in baseball. In the last 30 days, the Yankees at home in Yankee Stadium, 24th in WRC plus, 27th in OPS. So the Yankees have not been hitting at home recently. Their numbers against righties still look fine, though. This is still the best lineup in baseball against right-handed pitching on the season, first across the board. In the last 30 days, I mean, 12th, 13th, and 13th. That's not bad. As far as their numbers against righty starters, I mean, last 9 righties to pitch against the Yankees, 3.69 ERA and a 123 whip. So that's not great. They have gotten to the last couple, though. And when we pull up the game logs, I mean, they did get to Dean Kremer a little bit. 6 base runners, 2 earned runs in less than 5 innings of work. They absolutely smoked Grayson Rodriguez, which is really impressive because Grayson Rodriguez is having a good year. So they did get to them. But before that, I mean, Zach Eflin, the guy we're about to talk about, 7 innings, just 5 base runners, 1 earned run on July 10th. So they weren't able to touch Zach Eflin, I mean, just over a week ago. Speaking of Zach Eflin, we do have to mention that he's pitched really well against the Yankees. He's made 5 starts against the Yanks since joining Tampa. 2-2 with a 2.03 ERA, 0.87 whip. Excellent looking numbers there. He's also pitched well on the road in Yankee Stadium, which is a little bit more surprising because Zach Eflin, known to be a guy you can fade on the road. Well, he's actually pitched well here. He's made 3 starts in Yankee Stadium since joining Tampa. He's 2-0 with an even 2 RA and an 0.78 whip. So he hasn't had problems coming on the road to Yankee Stadium and pitching. As far as his numbers on the season, they look solid. I mean, 3.99 ERA, 1.12 whip. Last 7 starts, last 4 starts look pretty on par with that. His numbers on the road definitely don't look as good. In his last 6 road starts, he's got a 5.79 ERA, 6.11 in his last 3 road starts. But if you look at the whip and the expected FIP, indicates that he's actually pitched pretty well, just got a little bit unlucky as far as letting runs across, but still, historically, we know Zach Eflin, definitely a more reliable guy at home. And when you look at his game logs, you can see it. I mean, July 4th on the road in Kansas City, he got smacked around. 5 earned runs, 7 base runners, and just 5 innings of work. I mean, his home starts on here look excellent. Then you scroll back to June 22nd on the road in Pittsburgh. I mean, he did let up 4 earned runs, but just 6 base runners in 7 innings. That's a solid start. Road start before that, the Braves got to him. Road start before that, he only made it 4 innings in Miami, even though that wasn't even that bad. So it's not that he's been absolutely terrible on the road. He's just definitely been more reliable at home. I do have some good news for you if you're looking to back Eflin, though. If you're looking to back Tampa, Eflin's got really nice looking numbers against lefty bats. 268 WOBA and a 104 whip against lefties. If you look at the Yankees lineup, without Stanton in it, I mean, they got 5 lefties, including 3 of their first 4 hitters. So the Yankees earlier in the season were a pretty righty-heavy lineup. Nowadays, they're looking more on the lefty-heavy side. Pitch mix-wise, Zach Eflin throws the sinker and the cutter. Those are his 2 main pitches. Yankees 8th and 14th in the last 30 days against those 2 pitches, so really nothing to take away there. As a whole on this side, I mean, pretty difficult to make a prediction. I personally think Zach Eflin's going to pitch well, but, I mean, it's on the road in Yankee Stadium. Are the Yankees bats coming to life after the All-Star break? We saw him get to Grayson Rodriguez, so I'm definitely a little shaky about backing Zach Eflin here, although if you put a gun to my head and force me to make a prediction, I think he will pitch well. As far as the bullpen matchup here, the Yankees bullpen finally is back. Earlier in the season, they were one of the best bullpens in baseball, and then they went ice cold. In the last 30 days, they're back up in the top half. In the last 14 days, back up into the top 10. So finally, the Yankees bullpen returning to form. Much better than the Rays bullpen, which has been bottom 10, bottom half of baseball pretty much all season. So Yankees definitely have the bullpen edge. As far as offensively against bullpens, I mean, pretty even. I guess slight edge to Tampa, but really nothing here. Both of these units have been bottom 10, bottom half offensively in the late innings. As far as betting this game, I mean, this is a challenging one because I really don't know how I feel about the Yankees bats against Eflin. I feel like that matchup is a little bit of a wild card. He's pitched well against the Yankees, but Eflin on the road is definitely fadeable. The thing is, there's no way that I'm fading Garrett Cole against this Rays lineup who can't seem to get to a righty starter. So Garrett Cole should deal. The Yankees bullpen's been coming back around. They're rested. Obviously, it was just the All-Star break. So the angle I like is the Rays not to score. How I want to play that is up for debate. I mean, Yankees first 5 run line, you can get it at like minus 112, minus 118, I think I saw it at. That's a possibility. Just bet on Cole. Or Yankees minus 1.5 at plus 125 is a possibility. Or even Tampa team total under 3.5, but you got to pay like minus 120 for that. So that's the way I'd go here. Probably not going to bet this one, but I'm circling some kind of bet that involves the Rays offense, fading the Rays bats. That's the way I'm looking at this one. Next up, we got Detroit on the road in Toronto. This one pretty close to a pick'em. Toronto very, very short favorites at home here. Total all the way down at 7.5. Good pitching matchup in this one. We got Jack Flaherty against Chris Bassett. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet, and the model likes Detroit here. An even 3 to 2.26 after 5 innings. Final score 5.47 to 4.26 Detroit. Now let's get into this matchup. Detroit is another team that was on a little bit of an offensive hot streak, just like the Reds right before the break. I mean, look at the last 14 days. Keep in mind, there's a big chunk missing out of those 14 days because of the All-Star break, but second in WRC+, second in OPS, second in WOBA. Do we draw any conclusions from those numbers? Probably not, but it's interesting to bring them up. In the last 30 days, Tigers looking like a bottom 6, bottom 7 lineup in baseball, 24th in WRC+, 24th in OPS. This is their numbers on the road, by the way. So the Tigers have not been a reliable lineup on the road this season or in the last 30 days. But again, last 14 days, super small sample size. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, same story here. Last 30 days, 20th across the board. Last 14 days, top 5. So if it wasn't tough enough to handicap these games coming off a break, now you have a couple lineups who were ice cold and then got scorching hot right before. Tough to make a prediction. As far as righty starters, I mean, the numbers look okay. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Tigers, 4.71 ERA, 140 whip. So, I mean, it's not terrible. If you pull up the game logs, they got 4 runs on Tanner Bybee, but he was able to pitch 7 innings, just 8 base runners. That's a solid start. They did get 6 earned runs off of Ben Lively. But again, he pitched into the 6 innings, just 8 base runners. That's really not that bad. They scored runs on him, but it's not quite as bad as 6 earned runs makes it look. Before that, they did get to Graham Ashcraft. They only scored 1 earned run, but 9 base runners and 4 2/3 innings of work. It's solid. But then before that, Hunter Green, 7 shutout. Bailey Ober also shut this team down. But they got to Carson Spears, and they were able to get to Simeon Woods Richardson a little bit. Tough to draw any conclusions here. We've seen the Tigers bats come to life against some righty starters recently, but we've also seen them struggle to get to some. So, like I said, tough to draw any conclusions there. I do have some good news for the Tigers. They've actually had some success against Chris Bassett recently. Since joining the Blue Jays, he's made 2 starts against the Tigers. He's 0-1 with a 4.50 ERA, 160 whip. The current Tigers bats against Chris Bassett lifetime, they're hitting 345 of them with an OPS over an even 1. So this current Tigers lineup has great numbers against Chris Bassett, so that's a good sign. And also, Chris Bassett did not enter the break throwing his best baseball. I mean, his last 2 starts, 6.30 ERA, a whip above 2. 210 whip is insane. That's a lot of base runners. Now, those starts were on the road, and his numbers at home look solid. His last 6 home starts, 3.12 ERA, 153 whip. But again, look at the last 3 home starts. 3.18 ERA, 171 whip. That's a lot of base runners for only having a 3.18 ERA. You cannot let guys on base at that rate and only giving up 3 runs per 9 innings. And when we pull up his game logs, I mean, look at the base runners. Giants, only 3 earned runs, 9 base runners. Astros, 4 earned runs, 12 base runners. The Yankees, I mean, even his great start against the Yankees, 6 shutout innings, still allowed 8 base runners in that game. Then you get to a great start on the road in Fenway. But then before that, that same Red Sox lineup, 9 base runners. Before that, 5 shutout innings in Milwaukee, 9 base runners. So Chris Bassett may be dancing on some thin ice here as far as these earned run numbers. I would say regression is on the way for Chris Bassett. I mean, we've already seen 2 shaky starts in a row. Judging by the rate he's putting guys on base, I don't expect that to stop. Also, as we know, one of Chris Bassett's main weaknesses is lefty bats. He's got terrible numbers against lefties this year. 348 WOBA to 166 whip, 492 expected FIP. Now, Detroit is only projected to have 4 lefties in the lineup, but 3 of their first 4 hitters are lefties. So a few of the Tigers' main offensive pieces are left-handed bats. So I actually like that for the Tigers. Now, if you are looking to back Chris Bassett in this one, you can point at the pitch mix, and this is definitely kind of scary if you like the Tigers. His main pitch is a sinker by far. Throws it over 41% of the time. Tigers' bottom 5 lineup in baseball against the sinker in the last 30 days. So you definitely don't love to see that if you're trying to back Detroit here. Personally, I think the second half of Chris Bassett's season is going to be significantly worse than the first half. So I'm down to back this Tigers lineup. I think they are able to score some runs on Bassett. On the other side, we got the Toronto Bats. pretty average, below average looking numbers here. I mean, the last 30 days, 19th, 20th, and 20th. As far as their numbers at home, kind of the same, 16th, 22nd, and 20th. So a below average lineup, period, a below average lineup at home. And as far as their numbers against right-hand pitching, kind of the same. I mean, average to slightly below average in the last 30 days, 16th, 17th, and 19th. They haven't really been getting to right-handed pitching, but they have gotten to some righty starters. The last 8 righty starters to pitch against the Blue Jays, 6.17 ERA, 137 whip. The last 4, 9.45 ERA and a 165 whip. So they've gotten to some righty starters, and if you pull up the game logs, 3 of the last 4. I mean, Zach Gallen, 6 earned runs, 10 base runners. Then they got blanked by Ryan Nelson. I mean, they got 3 earned runs, but just 5 base runners in 7 innings. That's terrible. But then before that, crushed Jordan Hicks. Before that, crushed Logan Webb. And if you scroll back before that, they were even able to get to George Kirby a little bit, which nobody is. So this Toronto lineup, the numbers don't look great, but they definitely are showing signs of life as far as getting to righty starters. These numbers don't lie. Now, here's the bad news if you're trying to back the Blue Jays here. They have terrible career numbers against Jack Flaherty. The current Blue Jays bats have 61 career bats against Jack Flaherty. They're hitting 148 off him with a 492 OPS. That's awful. And Jack Flaherty's familiar with this team. He's actually made 3 starts against the Blue Jays in the last year and a half. Since in the last 15 months, Jack Flaherty has made 3 starts against the Blue Jays, all 3 with different teams. So he's pitched against the Blue Jays 3 times in the last 15 months, all with different teams. He's got great numbers. He's 2-1 with a 2.08 ERA and a 121 whip in those starts. So Jack Flaherty has had no problems pitching against this team. And by the way, he's having a career season on the year, 3.13 ERA, 0.98 whip. Last 5 starts, 2.30, 0.91. So Jack Flaherty's been great. He's been even better on the road. His last 6 road starts, 2.36 ERA and an 0.87 whip. He's truly been excellent. Here are his game logs, and weirdly, on June 27th, he got tagged up on the road in LA by the Angels, which was inexplicable. Other than that, I mean, where are the bad starts here? Other than that Angels game, in his last 5 starts, he's allowed 2 earned runs total. I mean, he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball, with the exception of that June 27th start in LA. So Jack Flaherty has been as reliable as it gets this year. He's also got solid numbers against righties and lefties. Specifically, we're looking at his numbers against righty bats here because Toronto, a very righty-heavy lineup. They're projected to have 6 righties in the lineup, including 4 of their first 5 hitters, but not really a concern for Jack Flaherty. He's got solid splits. As far as pitch mix, though, he's very reliant on the 4-seam fastball. 44.2% of the time he throws that pitch. Toronto is a top 10 lineup against that pitch in the last 10 days. So there's something if you're looking to back Toronto, but personally, I don't see any reason to doubt Jack Flaherty. He's been so good this year. Toronto's a lineup that I know has gotten to some righty starters recently, but not Flaherty. He's had no problems pitching against this team in the past. I'm down to trust Flaherty here. So I like the edge for the Tigers in the first 5 here. I think we could trust Jack Flaherty, and I think the Tigers are going to get a few runs on Chris Bassett. Now, when we get to the bullpen battle, again, edge goes to the Tigers. Surprisingly, Detroit in the last 30 days, that bullpen's been pretty solid. 16th in ERA, 12th in WOBA. Toronto's bullpen in that time, one of the worst in baseball, 28th and 29th. And offensively against bullpens, now keep in mind, I know that Tigers graphic looks really green. With the All-Star break, that's an extremely small sample size. And if you use the last 30 days, actually the slight edge would go to Toronto here. So I'm not drawing any conclusions from these numbers, but still, the Tigers bullpen has definitely outperformed the Blue Jays bullpen. So I like the edge for the Tigers in the first 5. I like the matchup for the Tigers bullpen. Tell me why we shouldn't take this team at minus 102. I mean, I haven't bet this yet. I'm hesitant because, I mean, I really would like a plus 115 because the truth is Toronto is the much better team here. And if you take a step back and look at it and throw the matchups out, you're the much better team at home at close to a pick'em. So I don't know. It'll be Tigers or pass. I do like the Tigers. I haven't finished going through the games yet. So maybe I end up throwing a bet on the Tigers, but as of right now, Tigers are pass. Next up, we got the Padres on the road in Cleveland. Guardians are short favorites at home here, minus 135 or minus 140, depending on your sports book. Total sitting at 7.5. Got a nice pitching matchup in this one. Matt Waldron against Tanner Bybee. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on Cleveland here. 2.78 to 1.93 after 5 innings. Final score 4.48 to 3.53. So let's jump into this one. We'll start with the Padres bats. Numbers actually look pretty solid. 8th in WRC+, 12th in OPS in the last 30 days. Now, the numbers in the last 14 days look pretty shitty, close to a bottom 5 lineup. But again, as I've said several times, it was really just like a 5 or 6 game hitting slump that's being exaggerated because of the All-Star break. It's really not 14 days. So maybe take those with a grain of salt. The numbers on the road, again, looking solid here. In the last 30 days, top half of baseball. On the season, this is a top 10 road lineup. So solid start for the Padres. The numbers against right-handed pitching, I mean, not terrible. Top half of baseball in the last 30 days, but definitely trending in the wrong direction if you take into consideration that hitting slump they had right before the break. And when you look at their numbers against righty starters, you can really see it. The last 5 righty starters to pitch against the Padres, 2.16 ERA and an 0.87 whip. So, yeah, they were really struggling to get to righty starters. And when you pull up the game logs, you can see they actually had 11 hits on Reynaldo Lopez. But before that, Spencer Schwellenbach shut him down. Bryce Miller, 6 shutout innings. Logan Gilbert almost pitched into the 9th. I mean, Ryan Nelson shut him down. So there's that hitting slump right there. 1, 2, 3, 4 righty starters in a row from July 7th to July 12th. Padres couldn't even sniff these guys. Which brings us to Tanner Bybee, who has great numbers on the year. 3.77 ERA and a 1.12 whip on the season. 3.34 and a 1.01 in his last 5 starts. He's got even better numbers at home, which is kind of crazy because he started off the season struggling in Cleveland. Look at his last 5 home starts, 2.48 ERA and an 0.97 whip. So he's been excellent in Cleveland. Here are his game logs, and I mean, yeah, the Giants got to him, and the Giants were on a bit of a heater against righties at that point. You can argue they still are, actually. Yeah, he got hit up by the Giants on July 5th, definitely. Other than that, though, I mean, 4 runs to Detroit, but he pitched 7 innings, just 8 base runners. Great start in Kansas City, great start in Baltimore, 6 shutout innings to Seattle. So, I mean, Tanner Bybee, we know, is having a great season. Not Cy Young type of season, but an excellent season, no doubt. Here's where I start to get a little worried for Tanner Bybee, though. Look at that 3.42 WOBA against lefty bats, 1.33 whip, significantly worse. I mean, he's got excellent numbers against righties, but against lefties, that scares me because the Padres will have 5 lefties in the lineup, including the first 3 hitters. Arias, Profar, Cronenworth. 1, 2, 3, all lefties. So that's definitely a terrifying sight here if you're trying to back Cleveland or Tanner Bybee. Now, the good news for Tanner Bybee is he throws the fastball a lot, and the Padres have been pissed against the fastball in the last 30 days, 26th in baseball against that pitch. But he also throws the slider, and they've actually been the best lineup in baseball hitting the slider in the last 30 days. So kind of a take it or leave it there. As far as making a prediction on that side, man, I have no idea. I want to trust Tanner Bybee. Scared of all those lefties, though. I'd say if you put a gun to my head and force me to make a prediction, Tanner Bybee probably pitches well here. But then we get to the other side, and what's going on in Cleveland, man? In the last 30 days, this is a bottom half lineup. I mean, 17th, 17th, and 18th. Last 14 days, again, take it with a grain of salt. Their numbers at home look great because they played a lot of road games recently. But in the last 30 days, they're a top 5 lineup at home, so we do have to give them that. But look at their numbers against right-handed pitching. A complete night and day difference than what we were seeing back in April, May from Cleveland. In the last 30 days, the Cleveland Guardians are a bottom 10 lineup in baseball against righties. And look at their numbers against righty starters. The last 8 righty starters to pitch against Cleveland, 2.84 ERA, 1.11 whip. The last 13, 2.53 ERA and 1.08 whip. 13 righty starters. Look at the last 4, 0.72 ERA, 0.84 whip. And pull up the game logs. I mean, they crushed Kenta Maeda. 2 2/3 innings pitched, 6 earned runs, 7 hits. They also got the birdsong a little bit, by the way. But other than that, they're not touching anyone. Any starting pitcher that throws with their right hand is blanking Cleveland right now. They really hit a slump against righty starters. So will that slump end against Matt Waldron? I mean, as you guys know, if you watch the show, I'm not big on betting when this guy pitches. He throws the knuckleball. I don't even know how to handicap it, really. On his last 8 starts, he does have good numbers, though. 3.08 ERA, 0.95 whip. 44 expected FIP indicates he's had some good luck, but still, he's been solid this season. He's also been solid on the road. His last 6 road starts, 2.55 ERA, 1.02 whip. So let's give some credit to Waldron. He's been good, and he's been consistent as hell. If you pull up his game logs, I mean, I mean, these aren't 7 shutout innings or anything like that. This dude's going to give you 5 2/3, in between 5 2/3 and 7 every outing, 2 or 3 earned runs. I mean, consistent as it gets. So I don't know if this is necessarily the guy that Cleveland wants to see to snap their hitting slump. But I will say he struggles against lefty bats. 318 WOBA and a 128 whip. Now, that's not terrible, but it's definitely worse than his numbers against righties, and Cleveland is as lefty-heavy as it gets in Major League Baseball. 8 projected lefties in the lineup, including their first 4 hitters. So there's something you're loving if you're betting the Guardians here. All those lefties against Waldron, who has worse splits against lefties. The problem is the splits aren't that significant. It's whatever. I mean, 318 to 276. Still, definitely not something you want to see if you're a Padres fan. Now, when we get to the bullpen matchup, no question, it's Cleveland all the way. I mean, as we were talking about a couple weeks back, the Padres bullpen has fallen off a cliff and doesn't even look like they're landing anytime soon. In the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5 bullpen. Expected FIP does indicate they've had some bad luck, but still, no question, Cleveland's bullpen has definitely outperformed the Padres. But the thing is, look at the offensive numbers in the late innings. In the last 30 days, the Padres are a top 10 lineup in the late innings. Cleveland, 28th in WRC+, 28th in OPS, 28th in WOBA. So just when we thought we had this game figured out, I don't even know what to think. Which is why I will definitely be passing on this game. I'd be lying if I said I didn't consider Cleveland at this price with all those lefties, but I think you got to be crazy to bet Cleveland against a righty starter right now. I mean, they've failed to get to 11 of the last 13 righty starters they've seen. The numbers are terrible. Every single righty starter is just taking turns throwing great games against Cleveland right now. So I don't know how you can bet them as a minus 135, minus 140 favorite when they might not touch Waldron. So I don't know. I guess Cleveland or pass, but this is going to be a pass for me. Next up, Orioles are down in Arlington. Rangers are dogs at home here, plus 135. Total sitting down at 8. We got a real good pitching matchup in this one. Corbin Burns pitching against Nate Eovaldi. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on the Rangers here. 2.26 to an even 2 Texas after 5 innings. 4.3 to 3.57 final score. So let's get into this matchup, and we'll start with the Orioles bats. Now, last 30 days, this is a top 5 lineup. Last 14 days, they're a bottom 5 lineup, but again, as I've said several times, last 14 days has a huge chunk missing because of the All-Star break, so take those with a grain of salt. Super small sample size. We look at their numbers on the road, they look great. In the last 30 days, one of the best road lineups in baseball because that little mini slump they went on right before the break was all at home. So obviously their road numbers wouldn't be affected by that. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, kind of the same. I mean, last 30 days, 6th in WRC+, 6th in OPS, 8th in WOBA. Last 14 days, bottom 3, bottom 4 in baseball. But again, with the All-Star break, we're talking about 7-8 games here. Now, something that does actually concern me, though, look at the numbers against recent right-handed starters here. The last 8 righties to pitch against Baltimore, 3.30 ERA and a 1.29 whip. Look at the last 3, an even 2 ERA and an 0.94 whip. When you pull up the game logs, I mean, that Yankee series, Baltimore couldn't touch these righties. Luis Gil, who's really been struggling, he threw a gem. Garrett Cole looked unhittable in that one. But then before that, Jameson Taillon, 6 innings pitched, just 2 earned runs, 5 base runners. Now, when you get back to early July, you can see that's back when Baltimore was hitting righty starters. But that Yankee series, and you throw in that Jameson Taillon start in there, a little concerning as far as the Orioles' numbers against right-handed starters. Now, after seeing that, you might be thinking, oh, they're screwed then, because Eovaldi's been good as hell. But here's the thing. Baltimore's been weirdly better against good righty starters, kind of like the Pirates numbers we were just looking at. On the season, against righty starters with an ERA below 3.50, Eovaldi's is 2.97, Baltimore's one of the best lineups in baseball. 3rd, 1st, and 1st in these 3 categories. But just when you think it might be a spot for the Orioles lineup to bounce back, you look at Eovaldi's history against Baltimore. Now, to be fair, he's never pitched against the Orioles as a member of the Texas Rangers. All these starts came with Boston, but since 2020, he's made 8 starts against the Orioles. He's 5-1 with a 1.45 ERA and an 0.96 whip. He always seems to pitch well against the Orioles. He has excellent history against this team. Look at this. The Orioles' current bats lifetime, they 140 plate appearances, so they're familiar with this guy. They're hitting 271 off him, just a 625 OPS. So they've really struggled to generate power when they've seen Eovaldi, the current Orioles bats, that is. If we pull up Eovaldi's numbers on the season, as we know, he's having a great year. 2.97 ERA, 1.04 whip. Last 6 starts. Look at his last 3 starts. 129 ERA, 0.62 whip. His numbers at home, even better than that. His last 5, his numbers at home on the year. This is on the season. 199 ERA and an 0.78 whip. He's been so good pitching at home in Arlington. Here are his game logs, and I mean, one bad start, June 15th on the road in Seattle. He got hit up by the Mariners in mid-June. Also on the road in Milwaukee, I mean, 10 base runners and 5 earned runs, but he pitched 7 innings, so it really wasn't that bad. But notice the A next to both of those starts. They were both on the road. Any start with an H next to it looks pretty damn good. This dude's been very good pitching at home. Also, he's been better against good lineups. Against top 10 lineups this year, Eovaldi's thrown 27 innings pitched, 3.67 ERA, 1.07 whip. So he's actually got better numbers when he pitches against good lineups. As we know, Baltimore's definitely a good lineup. Also, he's got real nice looking numbers against lefty bats. Now, his splits are pretty even, righty and lefty. The reason I'm bringing this up is because Baltimore is super lefty heavy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lefties projected to be in the lineup for the O's, including their first 4 hitters. So the last thing you want to see is a righty that has ugly splits against lefty bats. That's not Eovaldi. He performs well against lefty bats. Now, the Orioles do hit the fastball very well. Eovaldi throws the 4-seam fastball on 36% of his pitches. Baltimore is third against that pitch in the last 30 days, but Eovaldi is also huge on the splitter. Throws it over 30% of the time, and Baltimore's really struggled against that pitch. So I honestly like this matchup for Eovaldi. I mean, I'm not jumping at the idea of fading the Baltimore bats coming off the All-Star break, especially after that mini slump, but Eovaldi's been excellent at home. He's got excellent history against this team. I think he should pitch well here. On the other side, we got the Rangers bats. Pretty average looking numbers here in the last 30 days, 15th in WRC+, 14th in OPS, 13th in WOBA. As far as their numbers at home, 10th, 8th, and 7th. So they have been a top 10 lineup at home in the last 30 days, which is huge because earlier in the season, that was not the case. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, 21st, 19th, 18th, nothing really there. As we know, Rangers getting to right-handed pitching has been a situation for the Rangers this year. Now, it looked like they were going to hop out of that, too. If you rewind about 2 weeks ago, and you can see the last 10 righty starters to pitch against the Rangers, 5.70 ERA, 1.50 whip. But look at the last 3. 2.50 ERA and an 0.89 whip. So as quickly as they heated up against righty starters, it looks like they cooled right off in that Houston series. And here it is in the game logs. Ronel Blanco, Arrighetti, Hunter Brown, 3 righties in a row blanked the Texas Rangers. And now they're going to try to hit off Corbin Burnes, and check this out. I just pointed out earlier how Baltimore is actually better against good righty starters. Well, Texas is not. In fact, against righty starters with an ERA below 3.50, Corbin Burnes is 2.43. So against righty starters that fit that demographic, Texas is the worst lineup in baseball as far as generating runs and base runners. So not a great start to the handicap here. And then when you pull up Corbin Burnes' numbers, I mean, 2.43 ERA, 1.04 whip on the season. He hasn't slowed down at all. Last 7 starts, last 3 starts look excellent. His numbers on the road, excellent. His last 5 road starts, 2.73 ERA, 0.91 whip. So Corbin Burnes has been great. He's been great on the road. Here are his game logs. The Cubs actually did give him some problems in his last start, but he was fine. I mean, other than that, these are some really impressive looking game logs. The Phillies gave him some problems back on June 16th, but I mean, it's the Phillies, so yeah, Corbin Burnes, as we know, has been dominant as hell this year, and it actually gets even better for Corbin Burnes. Look how good he's been against lefty bats. This is huge here. 2.19 WOBA and an 0.93 whip against lefties. He throws that cutter, so he's been dominant against lefty bats. Look how many lefties are projected to be in the lineup for the Rangers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you love to see that if you're planning on backing Corbin Burnes here. So as much as I love the matchup for Eovaldi here against the O's bats, I think Eovaldi's going to deal. I think Corbin Burnes is going to deal right back. I think we're looking at a possible 0-0 score here after 5 innings. So I do like the first 5 under. The problem is, if you want to bet that, you're going to have to take a 3.5 at plus 100, which is ugly. A first 5, 3.5. That's disgusting to even consider. Now, when we get to the bullpen matchup here, it's Texas. In the last 30 days, the Rangers are a top 5 bullpen, 5th in ERA, 5th in WOBA. As we were talking about before the break, Baltimore's bullpen has just fallen off a cliff. They're actually a bottom 5 bullpen in the last 30 days. And offensively against bullpens, again, edge goes to Texas. They've got pretty average offensive numbers in the late innings. In Baltimore, I mean, the last 30 days it's pretty even. On the last 14 days has the All-Star break in it, so maybe disregard these numbers here. But still, no question, the Rangers bullpen has outperformed the Orioles bullpen, which is why there's no way I can bet Baltimore at this price. I mean, I like Corbin Burns to deal, but minus 155, minus 160 when I think Eovaldi's going to deal right back and the Rangers are at home with the bullpen edge, can't do it. Can't do it. So I like an under. There's no way I can bet the Rangers because I think Corbin Burns is going to blank them. But I'd look at it under at 8 or 8.5. But actually, I think my favorite bet here might be Baltimore team total under 4.5. You can get it at 4.5. Eovaldi at home. Eovaldi against a team he's historically dominated. The Orioles bats have terrible lifetime numbers against Eovaldi. So maybe Orioles team total under 4.5 would be the way I'd look here. Next up, we're doing White Sox Royals. This one's in Kansas City. Royals pretty heavily favored at home here, minus 200. Total sitting at 8.5 or 9, depending on your sports book. We got Chris Flexen pitching for the White Sox. Michael Wacha on the mound for the Royals. Let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. And according to the model, we got to lean on Kansas City here. 3.09 to 2.25 after 5 innings, 5.21 to 4.11 final score. So before we get into this one, let's look at some ROI numbers. And I mean, I'm sure you already know this, but Kansas City's been much more profitable than the White Sox. White Sox are still the least profitable MLB team in baseball this year, minus 34.9% ROI on the season. Orioles are just above even, plus 5.2%. But the fact that this game's in Kansas City is significant because the Royals at home have a plus 18.6% ROI, and the White Sox on the road have been an abomination to your bankroll if you've been backing them. So ROI-wise, edge definitely goes to Kansas City. So let's get into this one, and we'll start with the White Sox bats. Worst lineup in baseball this year. Dead last in OPS, dead last in WRC+, dead last in WOBA. Same goes for the last 30 days. Their numbers on the road, I mean, I guess slightly better. On the season, 29th across the board. In the last 30 days, 21st, 21st, and 21st. So, okay. The White Sox on the road in the last 30 days, not practical joke bad, I guess. As far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, again, worst lineup in baseball. Dead last across the board on the season. Dead last across the board in the last 30 days. Here's the thing. They haven't really been getting blanked by righty starters, though. The last 12 righty starters to pitch against the White Sox, 4.57 ERA, 121 whip. Same goes for the last 7 righty starters. And if you pull up the game logs, I mean, I'm not saying they're getting to righty starters, but they're not getting completely shut down. I mean, they got to Mitch Keller the last time they saw a righty starter. That was on July 14th, right before the break. Pablo Lopez, 5 innings, 2 earned runs. Now, it says Pablo Lopez twice because there was a doubleheader that day, and the doubleheader glitches out my spreadsheet, so I could not figure out how to fix that. So that's why it says Pablo Lopez twice. Chris Paddock, 5 innings, 2 earned runs. Okay, I mean, 2 earned runs. Edward Cabrera, 3 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 5 base runners. Chirinos, 3 earned runs, 7 base runners. Munoz, 2 earned runs. So, I mean, look, they're not getting completely shut down to the tune of 6 shutout innings or anything. They are getting runs across, but as a whole, they're not getting to righty starters. It's just not practical joke bad. That's what I'll say. Now, this will be the 3rd time the White Sox bats are seeing Michael Wacha, and he's pitched excellent against this team both times. He's made 2 starts against the White Sox this season, 1.38 ERA and an 0.69 whip. So he's had no problems pitching against this team this year. And Wacha's having himself a great season. On the year, he's got a 3.83 ERA and a 1.24 whip. Look at his last 4 starts, the last 2 starts. Ever since he came back from injury, he's been great. He actually came back from injury pitching better than before he got hurt. His numbers at home look great. His last 3 home starts, 2.16 ERA, 1.20 whip. Last 2 home starts look great. Here are his game logs, and you can see that 4th one down on the road against Texas. That's when he came back from injury. He missed 3 weeks there in the beginning of June, and since he's come back, he's been awesome. I mean, he did struggle a little bit on the road in St. Louis in his last start, but, I mean, look at these game logs. Michael Wacha's having himself a hell of a season here. He's also pitched much better against bad lineups. Against bottom 10 lineups this year, he's got a 3.15 ERA and an 0.99 whip. So he's got excellent numbers when he's pitched against bottom 10 lineups. And as we know, the White Sox are most definitely a bottom 10 lineup. And it actually gets even better for Michael Wacha because he's got much better numbers against righty bats. 2.75 WOBA and a 1.16 whip against righties. Much better than his numbers against lefty bats. The reason that's significant is the White Sox are a very righty-heavy lineup. 7 right-handed bats projected to be in the lineup for the White Sox here. So that's another good look for Wacha. And it actually gets even better than that. Look at his pitch mix. His 3 main pitches are the changeup, the 4-seam fastball, and the sinker. The White Sox, one of the worst lineups in baseball against all 3 of those pitches. So all signs point to Michael Wacha pitching a great game here. I'm down to trust him. On the other side, we got the Kansas City bats, and this unit, I mean, the last 30 days, this is a bottom 5 lineup. 26th in WRC+, 25th in OPS. This lineup is not producing like it was earlier in the season. Now, their numbers at home are definitely better, but still, in the last 30 days at home, 19th in WRC+, 12th in OPS, 15th in WOBA. This is not the top 5 home lineup that they were earlier in the year. They haven't been hitting like that. And as far as their numbers against right-handed pitching, again, in the last 30 days, bottom 10 lineup against righties. Look at their numbers against righty starters. Last 7 righties to pitch against the Royals, 3.63 ERA, 1.16 whip. Last 2, 2.03 ERA and an 0.83 whip. Here are the game logs. I mean, they were struggling to get to Brian Bayo. Have you taken a look at the season Brian Bayo's having? I mean, everyone is scoring runs on this guy. He pitched into the 7th inning against Kansas City. Before that, Cutter Crawford, 7 shutout innings, just 3 base runners. I mean, these are not impressive game logs. They did get to Zach Eflin back on the 4th of July, but as a whole, the Royals are not getting to righty starters. And believe it or not, Chris Flexen has actually pitched well against Kansas City. He's made 4 starts against this team since 2021. He's thrown 20 innings pitched, 2.25 ERA and a 1.10 whip. So Flexen's pitched well against the Royals. And actually, Chris Flexen has been pitching well as of late. In his last 5 starts, Chris Flexen's got a 3.64 ERA and a 1.31 whip. Those are solid numbers. I mean, Chris Flexen's been pretty good. As far as his numbers on the road, definitely worse. In his last 5 road starts, 5.92 ERA. So you don't love the look of that. But as a whole, Chris Flexen's numbers not nearly as bad as you might think they are. And if you look at his game logs, check this out. I mean, these are solid-looking game logs here. In fact, there's 7 starts on this graphic. 5 of them are solid. He got hit up by the Dodgers on June 25th. He also got hit up by the D-backs back on June 14th. Other than that, every single start on this graphic is solid. So Chris Flexen's actually been pitching pretty well here. Now, Flexen has shown us that he's struggling with lefty bats this year, a 381 WOBA and a 146 whip. But the Royals only have 4 lefties in the lineup, at least 4 lefties projected to be in the lineup. 3 of their first 5 hitters are lefties, Pasquantino, Massey. They got a couple of dangerous bats in there. But as a whole, the Royals are more on the righty-heavy side. So I don't hate that for Flexen. Also, his pitch mix. 2 main pitches, the 4-seam fastball and the cutter. The Royals are 28th and 29th in baseball against those 2 pitches in the last 30 days. So believe it or not, this might not be a terrible spot for Chris Flexen. I don't think it's crazy to think he pitches a decent game. I'm not saying Chris Flexen's going to go on the road in Kansas City and throw a gem, but I don't think it's crazy to think that Chris Flexen gives you 5 2/3, 2 or 3 earned runs here. As far as the bullpen battle, no question the edge goes to Kansas City here. And you might be thinking, how is it no question? Because the Royals bullpen has been so bad this season. Well, look at the last 30 days, last 14 days. They're definitely trending in the right direction. That's number 1. And number 2, they just added Hunter Harvey from the Nats. So this Royals bullpen, which was bad, is A, on the come up, and B, just added a really nice righty arm. So I expect the Royals bullpen to be much better moving forward. Not to mention the White Sox bullpen has been absolute trash. So no question, Kansas City has the bullpen edge here. As far as offensively against bullpens, you got to give the edge to Kansas City, but I mean, not by much. The Royals haven't, in the last 30 days, the Royals are a bottom 5, bottom 6 lineup in baseball in the late innings, but they're still better than the White Sox, who have been the worst in baseball. So edge in the late innings definitely goes to Kansas City. As far as betting this game, I do have a bet down on this one. I took the under. I got a 9 at -120. I'm looking right now, and as I'm recording this, it looks like you can only get -125 now. Most sportsbooks have dropped it to 8.5. So hopefully by the time you're watching this, you could still grab a 9. I would play it at 8.5 also. The way I look at it, Michael Wacha's been great. There's no reason to doubt him against the White Sox, who can't hit anybody, can't hit righties, can't hit on the road. And all I need is a somewhat average start out of Chris Flexen. And we looked at his game logs. That's pretty much all he's been giving us is average starts. So I'm pretty comfortable here on my under at 9.
I forgot to record the ending part, and I turned all the lights off and everything. So obviously I wasn't able to get to every single game, but we'll go through every single one on the live show. That's at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. It's me, Toast, and Modai. So if you're able to make it, we'd love to see you in the comments. If you want my top bets or top bets from anyone on the staff here, head over to KyleKirms.com and sign up for Sauce Network Plus. Comes with the top bets, access to the Discord, and you get to participate in the weekly betting league. So if you're interested in that, head over to the website and sign up. Yeah, baseball is back. The All-Star break was a nice refresher for a couple days, but glad it's back. Let's have ourselves a good one. Remember to bet responsibly.